I welcome the opportunity afforded today by the presentation of this report to address the issue of alcohol misuse and to expand on the Government's plans to address the problem. I thank the members of the Joint Committee on Transport and Communications for their work on the issue of sponsorship of sport by the alcohol drinks industry and for their valuable contribution to this debate. I welcome the acceptance by the Committee that actions must be taken to address the harm caused to individuals and to the broader Irish society by the misuse of alcohol. The Committee was rightly cognizant of the devastating effects on communities and families brought about by the misuse of alcohol. Committee members were unanimous in their view that measures were required to be taken in order to deal with the problems caused by harmful alcohol consumption, and they noted that the misuse of alcohol in general is increasingly being identified in the younger age cohort. Clearly, there is much common ground between the members of the Committee, my department and the Government on this pervasive problem, one that causes enormous damage and harm to the lives of children, families and communities. I should say that in line with the Steering Group report on a national substance misuse strategy, I remain convinced that we must end the unhealthy association that currently exists between sports and alcohol through sponsorship. I understand the Committee's perspective on this, in that they see such a ban rather as a worthwhile aspiration rather than something that should be brought forward as a priority. However, I would respectfully maintain the view that ending sponsorship is an important element, and I accept what Deputy O'Mahony says, very much accept what he says, that it is only one element of a combination of policy instruments that we need to adopt if we are to make real progress in this area. And I would emphasise that and share with Deputy O'Mahony his view and his, I suppose, regret that in much of the public debate that has been had in recent months, there has been a huge concentration on the sponsorship aspect to the exclusion of many of the other instruments, which arguably, in fact, will be more impactful and will have a greater effect on what we want to achieve than the issue of sponsorship, although I maintain my view that the question of sponsorship must be an important element of what we seek to do. It's our view in the Department of Health that a close linkage between sport and alcohol undermines, or certainly risks undermining, the very real and tangible benefits our society gains from sport. Having said that, it is understandable, of course, and perfectly legitimate, that given its remit, the Joint Committee on Transport and Communications would address this issue primarily from the perspective of sports organisations and sport itself. They're interested in sport and are promoting sport. And as I said, this is perfectly legitimate, but I would acknowledge again what Deputy O'Mahony said, that the committee itself, although its concentration was on the issue of sports sponsorship, was not excluding the importance of the other instruments as well, as Deputy O'Mahony, I think, very helpfully has said. And I would urge the House, and indeed the broader public, to look at this issue in the round and to give the highest possible priority and consideration to public health, which is my main preoccupation in this debate. And it's also the perspective now adopted by Government in its recent approval of the drafting of the first ever public health alcohol bill in this jurisdiction. It has been contended clearly that there is a lack of evidence to show that a ban on sponsorship will be effective in reducing alcohol consumption amongst young people. There are in fact numerous peer-reviewed research reports and studies conducted both domestically and internationally that firmly demonstrate the effectiveness of integrated alcohol marketing communication strategies in which brand sponsorship is a key component. And I'd be happy to make these studies available to colleagues at any stage should they wish to examine them. These strategies are particularly effective in the acquisition and retention of new market audiences, especially amongst the younger age cohort. Firm conclusions can be made from the research. For example, that the age entry for first alcohol use among Irish children has fallen from 15 to 14, that marketing communications are highly effective in shaping attitudes, perceptions and expectancies amongst Irish youth, that exposure to alcohol marketing increases the likelihood that teenagers drink alcohol and that they start drinking at an earlier age and in a more harmful manner, that alcohol-branded sports sponsorship has a high recognition amongst young people, and that exposure to alcohol marketing communications is cumulative and normalises the consumption and harmful use of alcohol. However, no one can seriously expect to obtain, as it were, direct cause and effect evidence in this arena, and I don't think anybody can suggest that that is possible to obtain. Such a level of proof is simply not available, given that the behavioural impact of marketing communications, and specifically branded sponsorship, is so multi-layered and complex. It is clear, however, that integrated marketing strategies constitute a highly developed business tactic effectively deployed by alcohol companies to retain, develop and increase product sales, especially in young people. Sports sponsorship by alcohol brands is now a key component of their integrated marketing strategies. They enable alcohol marketers to reach and influence underage future consumers in a way that advances brand relationships way beyond the traditional above-the-line channels such as television and radio, print. The Government, of course, recognises the vital contribution of sports bodies in promoting and increasing participation rates in sport. That is why the three major national sporting bodies alone receive significant public monies through the Irish Sports Council for this specific purpose. Sports clubs themselves encourage children and teenagers, and Deputy O'Mahony referred to this, to see sporting performance and good health as incompatible, as it were, with heavy alcohol consumption. And I would be very strong in my praise of the sporting bodies, and some evidence of this that I've seen, in fact, recently in Deputy Dooley's constituency, where I visited in Ennis, had an opportunity to hear about some terrific work done by the GAA in that county, and this was a great year for Clare, of course, and Clare sport, particularly hurling, and a genuine commitment on the part of the GAA there, and I'm sure this applies in other counties as well, to address this issue of the harm that arises from alcohol and to seek to, as it were, seek to ensure that it's, as it were, separated, and alcohol abuse or overindulgence of alcohol, that it's so incompatible with the enjoyment of sport. But at the same time as a lot of this good work is going on, undoubtedly good work, children's sporting heroes are fashioned in alcohol-branded sports gear. The stadiums where they play or the backdrops against which they are interviewed on television are emblazoned with the branding of alcohol drinks. This is happening at the same time. So there's good work, extremely good work going on the one hand, and then all of this hugely impactful, particularly in television, material also available, or at least seen by young people and by people generally in society. So you have to ask, what message are we intending children to actually receive? While I, Ciarán, no less than anyone else, appreciate the emotional attachment we all have to national sporting success, particularly national sporting success, but also county and local and club success, can we reasonably say, and I ask this as a question, because we're having a debate, so I put this as a question as opposed to being, in any sense, overly assertive. Can we reasonably say that the needs of protecting public health are of lesser importance than the further professionalisation or the international success of our sporting codes? We have to ask that question, because this debate does involve actually pitting different imperatives against one another, I'm afraid. There's no possibility of our resolving this debate by saying that, we can have it every way. Because if we want to make some decisions here that are going to have an impact, they will have to be faced up to, and some of them may be very difficult. Just coming back to this issue of evidence, Ciarán, IEG, one of the world's leading authorities on measuring high-performance sponsorship programmes, defines effectiveness in measured returns, behaviour changes, results of emotional connections and psychological connectedness. These are applications of a highly sophisticated methodology where globally expenditure on sponsorship has reached €44 billion in 2009. In Ireland, a specialist sports sponsorship firm, Halpin Sport, has estimated the Irish market for total sports sponsorship at €96 million in 2011. Equally, it confirms for its potential clients that, quote, sports sponsorship offers the perfect platform for companies to engage and interact with a team's followers. It has the power to connect at a deep emotional level with fans and change the way they feel about products and brands, unquote. These known outcomes, I believe, echo the committee's own acknowledgement that the sponsorship of sports by alcohol brands is far from ideal. This recognition of an uncomfortable alliance perhaps shaped the recommendation of the committee that a fixed percentage of all sponsorship received by every organisation from the alcohol industry should be ring-fenced and paid into a central fund for alcohol and substance abuse prevention programmes. This is a very interesting proposal that very much bears further scrutiny. Ultimately, Ciarán, as the House will be aware, the Government has decided to put in place a process to deal with the differing perspectives that exist on sports sponsorship by alcohol companies. This process will enable all views to be examined and analysed, and I look forward to working with members of this House and the committee on this important debate and to reaching positive solutions. And I do appreciate the case that's made in respect of the funding gaps and the funding difficulties that would be faced by sporting organisations were a ban to be imposed. As the House will be aware, the Government has approved, and I've mentioned already, the drafting of a public health alcohol bill which details a package of measures to address this problem. This landmark initiative has come about following much consultation and dialogue between Government ministers and departments. It is the first time the misuse of alcohol has been addressed as a public health issue. The Irish public share the concern of the health authorities on this issue. Research commissioned by my department while preparing these measures showed that 78% of the public think that the Government has a responsibility to implement public health measures to address high alcohol consumption. The key measure approved by the Government is the drafting of health-oriented legislation to be called the Public Health Alcohol Bill. In summary, the bill will provide for minimum unit pricing for alcohol products, regulation of marketing and advertising of alcohol in the media domains of television, radio, cinemas, outdoor and print, as well as the content of such ads, regulation of sports sponsorship, specifically to place an existing voluntary code that governs sports sponsorship on a statutory footing, separation of alcohol from other products in retail, enforcement powers for environmental health officers in relation to alcohol, and health labelling of alcohol products. Minimum unit pricing for alcohol is one of the anchors of this package, and taken in conjunction with the other measures we are announcing has the potential to have a real impact on the harmful and hazardous consumption of alcohol. Minimum pricing targets alcohol that is cheap relative to its strength. It is one of the instruments to be used to tackle the very low cost at which alcohol is sold, sometimes in the off-trade sector, particularly in supermarkets. I said at the launch of the initiative that minimum pricing does not raise the price of every alcohol product. I want to emphasise this again. The pint in the pub or the bottle of premium whisky are already well above any price that would be set as a minimum price for their alcohol content. Almost all drinks in the pub are already sold well above any likely minimum price, so these drinks are unlikely to be affected. What the Government wants is for everyone to feel the economic and social benefits of addressing alcohol misuse. We want our citizens to experience these benefits through healthier, happier, safer families and communities. We know that there's a profusion of alcohol products in our stores. We see the, if I may describe this, in-your-face presence that these alcohol products now often have in our supermarkets and convenience stores. In this regard, I am particularly pleased that the Departments of Justice and Equality and Health have agreed a three-step approach to provide for the structured separation of alcohol from other products in mixed trading outlets. The first step involves replacing the current voluntary code with a statutory code under Section 17 of the Civil Law of Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2011. This section empowers the Minister to establish a new code that sets standards for the display, sale, supply, advertising, promotion and marketing of alcohol. Secondly, the new Public Health Alcohol Bill will empower EHOs to enforce structural separation provisions contained within Section 9 in the event that its commencement is required. And thirdly, after 2 years, both departments will review the effectiveness of the new statutory code in achieving the separation of alcohol from other products and control of access. The results and findings of this review will inform the Government's decision on whether or not it is necessary to proceed to commence Section 9 of the Intoxicating Liquor Act 2008. The Substance Misuse Steering Group made recommendations about dealing with the advertising of alcohol, and these will now also be developed in our forthcoming Public Health Alcohol Bill. Alcohol ads on television and radio will be restricted to evening hours, and my department will be working closely with the Department of Communications, Energy and Natural Resources to introduce this incrementally by 2016 through the statutory codes of the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland. Statutory codes of practice are also envisaged for the print media, cinemas, and to cover the manner in which alcohol is portrayed in advertisements. The legislation will also cover billboard and other outdoor advertising media. Its purpose will be to restrict such advertising from 2018, with a statutory code of practice to govern it in the interim. We will be working with other relevant government departments on identifying the form, frequency and prevalence of outdoor media advertising that will come within the scope of these statutory restrictions. As I have said already, and just for the sake of completeness, on the question of sponsorship of sport by alcohol companies, the Government has decided that the existing voluntary code of practice governing sports sponsorship will be given statutory status, whilst meanwhile a working group chaired by the Department of An Taoiseach will report within 12 months on the implications of regulating sponsorship by alcohol companies of major sporting events. New statutory provisions will also be introduced on the labelling of alcohol products. This is an important area for consumer information. It will also cover warning concerning the consumption of alcohol during pregnancy. The Government has agreed that future public health messaging on alcohol will be based on grams of alcohol rather than a standard number of drinks, and that the new low-risk drinking guidelines for men and women should be 168 grams, which is equivalent to 17 standard drinks, and 112 grams, which is equivalent to 11 standard drinks for men and women, respectively. We know clearly about the adverse effects of alcohol consumption on children, families and communities. It's a constant theme of public debate and comment. Meanwhile, there has been a strong public affairs campaign against a ban on sports sponsorship by alcohol companies. It is claimed, as the Joint Committee reports, that the link between sports sponsorship by alcohol companies and consumption of alcohol is not proven. I think this is somewhat perplexing for the reasons that I have given, in view of the fact that there is evidence available and also the significant levels of money that are, in truth, committed to alcohol brand sponsorship campaigns. In any event, we now have Government approval for a process to deal with this challenging aspect of tackling alcohol misuse. I emphasise again just one aspect of our suite of proposals. Meanwhile, we should advance the series of measures that have already been approved. The nature of the challenge we are addressing is to reduce Ireland's overall consumption of alcohol, and it requires a genuine public health response. I believe this will happen, and that this landmark initiative announced by Government will gain the support of the broader community and society. And in that regard and context, I again commend and thank the committee and all its members for its important contribution to this debate.
Thank you, Minister.